Terri Nopp, and I recently started a company called Online Newsroom. And the reason I started the company was because I saw this fundamental shift happening in the industry, and I wanted to be part of it. I've been in PR for 20 years. 2011 actually marks my 20th anniversary. And during the past 20 years, I've seen a lot of changes. And so what I thought I would do today is walk you through some of the changes that I've seen in PR from a PR person's standpoint over the past 20 years and where that puts us today. And that will give you context as to what we're talking about and why we believe storytelling is critical to gain trust and to help marketers start to connect better with their audiences. So 20 years ago in PR, 1991. That was the time when we actually had a lot of publications. We had long lead times. Sometimes the lead time was 4 months, so you really had to have your content ready to go. We actually had fact-checking back then. People would send us the articles, and we would fact-check it. And they would spend a lot of time fact-checking things. And there was media for every message you had. There were a lot of catchers in the field. And so what happened in the 90s, marketers, from a PR standpoint, we focused on messages and facts. Because facts were the only thing we had. There were no comment back sections there. It was, what were you doing? And that's the only way we could go back to the reporters. And the reporters didn't want stories that we had already thought of. Okay? They wanted to come up with their own stories. And so what we would do, a great PR exercise, we would come up with our press release headline and then try to guess all the headlines that we wanted to happen as a result of this very boring headline. And it never happened, folks, okay? Because the reporters, we never gave them the story that they wanted. In 1996, that's when the internet really hit, and online news hit. And what that meant is that those lead times went out the door. And the world was scrambling, and we were freaking out. And what really happened then, NDAs got tossed out the window. And in the early 90s, NDAs were it. I remember at Wagner Edstrom, I was working for Wagner Edstrom and Microsoft at the time. CRN broke an NDA, and the world fell apart. Microsoft was so upset, they called the publisher. And the guy's like, hey, nothing I can do. And that was the reality of the internet.
What's an NDA?
Oh, sorry. Non-disclosure agreement. We would work with press, and we'd say, if we're going to pre-brief you, if we're going to make those deadlines, you're going to sign an NDA so that we can give you the full scoop. And then they could research their story, and it was timed exactly right. And at that point, content started to become free. And publishers are going, how do we make money? So between 1996 and 2005, a lot of things changed. And journalists, you know, they were struggling, what was happening. But what really happened in about 2003 is there was a guy named Jason Blair. Is anybody familiar with Jason Blair? Yeah. Jason Blair was a reporter at the New York Times, one of the most prestigious newspapers in the country, probably in the world. He got busted for plagiarizing and for lying. 2003, he resigned in disgrace. The media industry at that point got a big old black eye, and they never recovered from it because people couldn't trust the media anymore, and the media were our watchdogs forever and ever. So then guess what? People went to people like themselves because they couldn't trust anybody else. Interestingly, non-government organizations started to rise at about this time, people's trust in those organizations, which is interesting. So now we come to 2011. Information is everywhere. We can access it through anything, through your Xbox, through your phone. We can tell if a person is lying, if they're saying something that's true or not, just by Googling it. You know, and what happened is the power of publishing shifted from the publishers to the people, right? Because people are now in charge. They can go anywhere. They can go to niche places. They don't have to go to the publishers that we relied on. And what's happened from a PR standpoint is we've gone from a pitching to a publishing model. And what I mean by that is we always pitched our stories. We'd come up with stories. We'd give them all the ingredients. Here, you go put it together. In the last 2 years especially, we've had more requests for contributed content, which are articles that we actually write so that the press can then post those. That's crazy, but it's not, because there's no more press. Because in the last 2 years, newspaper readership is down 40%. 200 plus have closed in the last 2 years. 700 plus magazines have closed in the last 2 years. Those are 700 potential outlets that could have covered my story. And the most interesting part, more people are now watching the internet than TV. If I was somebody at like CBS, I'd be going, oh, uh-oh, because my life is over. So what we're experiencing here is this consumer revolution. They're more informed, they're less trusting, and they're a heck of a lot more demanding. And so what we have to figure out, what to do is how to start to converse with them. And right now we know it's through conversations, and it's about fitting in. And people right now are going to different places for, to find information, and they're able to look at companies and research companies if you're saying something that doesn't quite gel. Spin is gone. Okay, spin, maybe that's what Bill Gates was thinking, right? Maybe in 2 years, spam's not going to be gone, but spin is, because you get busted with spin. And people are, what's happening is that open and honest communication and that trust, it's driving changes in how people look at business. And what do I mean about that? Well, as I said, I work for a company called Edelman, and they produce a trust barometer every year. It's wonderful. I encourage you all to go up to the Edelman site. And what they do is they measure the opinion elites of people around the world. And these are usually more educated people. They're heavy media consumers, okay? And what's happened here is that forever, it was always offers high-quality products of goods and services, but then, interestingly, the bottom two, those used to be up at the top. And so we actually thought that a strong management team was better than anything else. But what happened with the recession and what happened when everything came crashing down, we don't care about that anymore. We don't care how great your executive staff is, because if they lie to us, we don't want that company. And so what's happened is that trust and transparency have now made it to the top. These are the things that people are looking at in a company. And they're able to find it because they can go anywhere for information. And so if you think about, well, how do we start to develop trust again? How do we start to develop more transparent and honest communications? And what we believe is that, first of all, you have to think about people relate to people. I've been in B2B my entire PR career. And this is something that is really hard for enterprises to understand. They don't relate to your products. They relate to people. People also connect with people like themselves. Reality TV, anybody? We are more interested in watching other people than, trying to figure out, oh, does this new technology do this? It's not about that. And people want to hear stories about themselves. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that people don't want to hear about how a product is going to change their life. They want to know about their life, and that you understand their life, and they want to see their life, and then know how the product fits in. Good example, Apple and Microsoft. Apple focused on lifestyle. Microsoft focused on technology. Apple made people feel, I want to be cool. I want to be part of it. Microsoft is like, look, the technology is so cool, just follow us and we'll innovate. And that's not how it works. People want to hear stories about people. How do we know that? Let's go to some press and see what they say, okay? This is from the Wall Street Journal. Every client I have wants to get into the Wall Street Journal. Every client I have is an enterprise product who wants to pitch into the journal, right? This is what they tell us. They don't want products. They want a storyline. They are interested in plenty of drama, and we'll touch on that later because drama is key. They want things that are unexpected. What are the challenges? They could care less about all the fun, great stuff that we're doing. Most embarrassing, though, this is what they said, but PR people always start with the good news. Of course. because that's what our clients start with. We're talking about how their product is going to change the world. And the people are going, I can't relate to that, so whatever. And we have to get back to stories, and we have to get back to stories about people. And why? Because stories stick. The London School of Business did this research study. Sole use of statistics. This is a press release. 5 to 10% retention. With a little bit of storytelling, I think that's a case study. Your retention goes up. Now, if you're just doing storytelling alone, and I think that's like an article, which press wrote for us, 65 to 70%. Do you know how many press I want to go back and apologize to back in the 90s for throwing stats and stats and stats at them? We would go on press tours. I work for Microsoft. We would go on press tours like every month, trying to educate those people, trying to educate. Number one question, do you have a customer? Well, no, that they don't know anything. Look what this technology will do. And they're like, oh, dear God. So, don't believe me? Well, let's look and see what gets covered. What are the types of things that are getting covered? And I think it's going to be about people and what relates to people. So, if we look at Business Week, what they've done is they've related something to the tragedy, right? Glock sales surge. That is a headline that's going to capture people. There's a shock and awe element to it. They're also doing a stat. And in my world, stats are like sex, okay? If you think about the internet, it's about gossip and sex, period. And interestingly, ladies, gossip releases the same type of feel-good things that visual stimulation does for the men. So that's why gossip is so important for us. It releases a chemical called oxytocin. That's why we love to gossip. Men get that release visually, okay? So, Wall Street Journal. I love how they say this. Verizon, huge company, finally lands the iPhone. Well, duh, how long was that going to take? You know, as long as the AT&T contract ran out. Then we look at New York Times. Really? Do you really think that the Goldman Sachs Facebook coup, like embarrassed the rest of Wall Street? Well, that's what people read. That's what people click on. And Slipstream, okay? All my clients want to get into business press. And I look and I'm like, oh my gosh. I think, okay, I can get you in there, but you're not going to like the story. Yeah. Because if you look at the business press, first of all, getting in there is hard, okay? But getting a positive story, that's almost impossible. And I think Slipstream's PR people probably found that out. Because I wouldn't want that headline. I don't know about you guys. Finally playing catch up. Ooh. USA Today, this is funny, because USA Today, they take kind of this bent towards, you know, the smartphone causes confusion, right? And then the IEDs kill all these people. Again, stats, shock and awe. But look how Wired covered the smartphone launch, right? And you know who the Wired audience is. It's a bunch of geeks, and it's a bunch of tech guys. And so for them, all these choices of smartphones aren't confusing. They're big, badass, and beautiful. For the regular USA Today person, guess what? They're like, this is confusing. I also love Wired because booty suit? Truly? But yes, it was about WikiLeaks exposing some cables. I guess these sunken treasure divers are really, really paranoid about their locations, and WikiLeaks blew it. So now they're in a $500 million lawsuit. So those are the types of headlines. Those are the types of stories that are getting covered. That means that those are the stories that people are reading. And as we think from a business standpoint, how are we ever going to get our boring business messages into this compelling story, into a really cool headline that I would rather have instead of, you know, Slipstream plays catch up? So we need to, you know, figure out how to create those stories, and then we have to figure out how to, oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering, what is Slipstream?
Anybody? Anybody? I think it's I thought it was like a wireless, like, kind of carrier.
Oh.
So, yeah, yeah.
I thought it was some old type of library place.
No, these guys are just like, no.
Okay. I'm young.
Okay. Yeah, you were probably like 5 when I started here, okay, when I started PR. So, you know, what we want to talk about is how to get those stories, how to find those stories, how to develop the compelling stories from a business standpoint. And knowing the environment, you know, that is happening out there, that's also going to shape your story. And where we're going with all of this, you know, we've talked about this, is that from a PR standpoint then, and moving from that pitching to a publishing model, we really have to figure out how we're going to do this. And, you know, John Klein, he's the president of CNN, and he says every company should be a media company. We're like, yeah, we agree. This is amazing, right? This is one of the top media people in the industry, and he's saying, companies, look, you have to do this. You can't rely on us anymore to do it yourself. He actually just quit, by the way. I think he's going to head up some company probably doing this. So we might all be in competition. Great. And so from a PR standpoint, what we're finding is that the big disconnect is that right now when you go to a company's website to find information, what is the company doing? I heard that they might be, you know, making a partnership with Apple. I've heard that they might be going into this industry. I've heard this. Where do I go on their website to find the information? Well, it's like multiple sources. And unfortunately, when they go there, this is what they see. Is this compelling to anybody? Would anybody click through this if you weren't a media person? Anybody? No. Right, okay? This is the average site. PGE, do you guys know who PGE is? Huge. They've got resources. That's a hideous site. Boeing, oh my gosh, okay? And Nordstrom, you would, come on. You got to know better than this. Because this is not what the public wants. It's not why YouTube is #2 search engine, because people are wanting to read static text. This is what they want. And the leading news sites are creating content like this, because this is the only type of content that is going to capture attention, that is going to get people engaged and interested in your information. It's not going to be through those press sites that you see currently. And that's a tough thing for a lot of people to understand, especially from an executive standpoint, because executives are struggling with this. We really want to invest in this, but where's my hits? You know, PR was tough enough. We either had to get coverage, or people were like, where'd all that money go? And, you know, with this, we're saying, look, you have to produce this content. So now you have to, you know, invest even more, and you might not get hits in the traditional publications, but you know that it's going to be going everywhere. And hopefully you will get hits in the great publications, but you're not going to get hits going out with press releases. You're not going to get hits producing a list of information and, you know, stats that people would want to see. They want the story. Even press want the story. You want to go to a site like this because at the end of the day, every company is a media company. This is a business transformation that is happening. We're all on the cusp of it. Let's make it happen together. Great. Thank you.